Did you know I was personally dragged into the whistleblowing about the sexual abuse, trafficking of vulnerable women at the nonprofit organization with a false accusation by the female central to my story? I had support from some famous people like...
One man told me about being beaten by the police and left permanently disabled because of a woman's false allegation.
Hello, it's December 2025. Now, this video is inspired by something that I've been really thinking about over the past several years and more over time. Even the past several months, been really thinking about it. And it's something that's not talked about at all. And when you're young, you really don't think about it. And when you hit, I guess, what's called middle age, you kind of, sort of, maybe think about it a little bit. But you do start thinking about it when you hit a certain point in your life. Now, before I get into what I would like to talk about, I want to talk about a video that I had recently seen, which kind of ties into with the topic of this video. Now, this has to do with an animal species called honey badgers, and wolverines also are part of the same family, so it kind of relates to them as well. Now, honey badgers and wolverines, they're a very vicious, aggressive little animal. I think the biggest they can get up to is like 40 pounds, and they literally have no fear. And their body design, physically, they're tough. And the whole character, the comic book character of Wolverine, is kind of based on this little animal, how vicious this animal is, and how indestructible this animal really is. Not to say it's completely indestructible, but if you ever look into the honey badger or wolverine, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Now, in the wild, these animals, they kind of max out at about 8 years. Now, in captivity, these animals, they can live up to 30 years. That's a huge discrepancy. Now, why is it? Well, when you look at the wolverine, the honey badger, essentially having no fear, and they're aggressive, meaning that they take a lot of high risks and they will literally attack anything. And a little 40-pound animal has been known to take down animals as big as moose, which we're talking like, what, 1,500 pounds for a male moose? Like, they're huge. And because of, I guess, as a descriptive, the lifestyle of the honey badger or the wolverine and all the injuries that they sustain physically and probably mentally as well, it really drastically decreases their lifespan in the wild. Essentially, they live a very hard life. And because of that, it takes away from their lifespan. Let's just segue for a moment. I have to interject this part. When people talk about, for example, whether it be conventional medications or alternative medications, I've always said, prove that what someone does or takes adds to their lifespan. And people will try to do mental gymnastics to give answer to that. But the reality is you can't prove either way. However, it's very clear, whether it be human or an animal species, for example, a lifestyle can take away from someone's lifespan, but again, to what degree and exactly when, no one knows. That's key. So what does the honey badger and the wolverine have to do with the topic of this video? Well, when people are young children, before puberty, adults, usually parents, should be parents, will tell them when they reach puberty, they'll have changes, physical changes, observable changes, and there will be things going on that weren't going on before. And puberty really has to do with the procreation end of any species, the human species in this case. So people will prepare young children for that stage in their life. And then from there, when they hit puberty, they become young adult teenagers, and eventually young adults to adults. And I've said before, there are many, most perhaps, what are deemed as adults never grow up mentally. Perhaps even, I guess you could say physically, but now I'm digressing completely here. But what people do not talk about in society, at least in the West, in the Western culture, is what happens when people start to age. And this is something that's really overlooked and is just as important as, for example, preparing a child for the time in their life when they do reach puberty and the whole concept of procreation. Because sex is really about procreation, not recreation. But we see, especially in the Western culture, how, for example, through feminism, it's become about recreation. And all these magical, mystical ideas, even through religions and belief systems, have created something that is something romanticized. But ultimately, the truth about it is set aside. But as people age, the body goes through changes. More so when you hit a certain point in your life, and everyone's going to hit that point, just like with puberty, at different points in their life. You're going to notice, for example, wrinkles and age spots on your hands that were never there before. And you'll look down and say, well, whose hands are these? So just like for a moment, you'll be in shock. And then you realize, wow. And it's that realization that your youth is gone. You're never going back to that. And what's really interesting, when you hit that point with age, setting aside anything medical or anything else or injuries, your mind is still thinking, for example, that you're 18 years old and you want to do stuff, but the body's going, nope, it's not happening. And that acceptance alone is very, very challenging, because you realize that you can't do, say, for example, physical activities that you once did. Now, there are people who will push through that and keep going with their activities, say, through exercise, lifting weights, or whatever, which is fine, but the reality is you're not, for example, pushing the same weight that you used to when you were in your 20s. It's impossible. And we even see extreme examples of people, mostly women, going through cosmetic surgeries to try to keep that youthful look, forgetting that under the surface everything is aging. And usually these cosmetic surgeries, to be honest, make people, especially women, look worse. I guess you could say they're not aging gracefully, but that's a different topic. Although I guess you could say it's directly part of this topic. The challenges that people face because no one says, hey, for example, elderly person saying to someone who is becoming of age with age, saying, hey, there's going to be changes and you're going to be facing these things. Your energy is going to be less, these wrinkles, age spots. And then comes health conditions. For example, injuries from your youth will start to catch up with you. And other injuries as well throughout life, just like the Wolverine, will all catch up. And serious injuries that you may have had through life become even worse, the pains and everything else. And then there's other medical things that occur, like for example, with organs, or even something as serious as sepsis, which really takes its toll. You can have issues with heart and your spine, which could leave you paralyzed. And it almost seems like there comes a point in your life where everything just seems to happen at once. It's almost as if, for example, using an analogy, when you buy something new, let's just take a new car, which is a bad investment, but that's a different topic in itself. And you have a warranty. And how many people have noticed, for example, whether it be a car or anything, whatever the thing is, seems to work fine until literally the day the warranty expires, and all of a sudden, problems. It's kind of like that with us. Anything living, any species. You hit a certain point, all of a sudden it's like, wow, there's all these things happening. And no one, for example, family or perhaps even friends or society overall, takes the time to talk to people as they start to age and say, hey, prepare for these things happening. And even your cognitive abilities, you're not as sharp as you used to be. You still may be sharp, but you're not as sharp as you used to be. And over time, that just kind of slows down as well. And you start to realize, just say, for example, even your memories. You might have to struggle a little bit more to remember something. And when you start to realize that, that's kind of like, oh, there may have been a time, for example, where you were able to cite something instantly. Boom, there it is. Now, it might take several minutes, at the worst case, maybe a few hours, and then be like, I remember this, and well, by then, if there's a conversation taking place, it's a little bit too late. And then we have other things that are related to age that are very serious. For example, people lose their memories. They lose their ability to walk. They lose even control over their bodily functions and everything else. And those are extreme cases that tend to happen in elderly years. But no one ever talks to people as they start hitting these different stages with age. Hey, this is what's going to be taking place. So you go through your teen years not even thinking about these things. Life is eternity at that point. In your 20s, you feel invincible because you have a little bit knowledge and you're physically gung-ho. Your 30s, you're still kind of there. Start getting into your 40s, you kind of hang on. You start hitting your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, then you start to really go on, whoa, what's happening. And for a lot of people, as they age, it takes a huge psychological toll. It can even lead to, as a descriptive, depression, sadness, further becoming less motivated. And when you start to look, as you get older, the young people in their teens, or especially in their 20s, and you see them, whether it be a group of young men or young women, and you're remembering, oh, I used to be in a group like that as well. And you see, for example, from a male's perspective, these young men acting all macho and tough or whatever, and you know, the arrogance and the confidence and everything else, and you see that, you're like, wow, I used to be there. To different degrees I'm talking, right? And you see, for example, when young people are in relationships, new relationships, and the excitement and the joy, and they're holding hands, and you see the young man opening the door for the young woman going into a store or a restaurant or whatever it is, and they have all these dreams and goals, and their whole life's ahead of them, and you look back and you go, wow, I was there too, and everything is new. And when you see, for example, when you look at their faces, smooth skin, no wrinkles, no battle scars of worry even. It doesn't have to be physical battle scars, but just going through life. You don't see any of that on their faces or their hands. I'm just going to segue for a moment. When we see, for example, older people wanting to date younger people, it's not so much of a kink or, as a descriptive, a perversion. It's more knowing that that's where a lot of people had left off when they met somebody, and say, for example, their wife or husband passes on, kind of default that. Plus, you also, from a man's perspective, you look at a young woman being healthy for procreation, because really that's what sex is all about. And a young or an older woman would look at a young man the same type of way, but from a woman's perspective. But then you realize there's nothing in common other than whatever may be at that moment of lust. And this is where people confuse lust and love and everything else. That's a different topic. But when you get older, especially when you get into your elderly years, and you look back and you see maybe even newborns, and you remember how throughout your life you've seen newborns, perhaps a sibling, and you see children playing in the playground. You find yourself just watching, remembering. You remember the games that you used to play. You get into your young adult, teenage years, and you remember, oh yeah, doing silly, stupid things in 20s and so forth, and realizing you can never go back. And then you start to realize and accept your mortality, because now you're getting into the last chapters of your life. But no one ever talks to people about these things as they age, preparing them physically, but mostly mentally. So perhaps I just really want to draw awareness to all this, because just like the Wolverine that lives in the wild, life takes its toll on people in different ways, and people's physical and mental abilities can only handle so much. And I've said a long time ago, relating to myself, too much by too many for too long will take its toll. And I know for myself, with everything that I'm dealing with physically as I age, and coming to all these realizations, you start to have to deal with these things in your own mind. Who do you really talk to? So perhaps bringing awareness to this, and maybe people start, elderly people look back and to others that are a little bit younger, and they look back to others who are a little bit younger and say, hey, get ready for this. Because the real big challenge is something that everyone's going to face. I'm going to share a little secret with you. None of us are getting out of here alive. And that is the end of an individual's story. The Wolverine lives a hard life in the wilderness, usually lives to about 8 years, because life has taken its toll. A Wolverine or a honey badger that lives in captivity may live 30 years old with comfort and safety and everything else. But then comes the rhetorical question of quality of life, which has its challenges and leaves its scars behind, or quantity of life, where there can be comfort and safety, but nothing learned. Just things to think about. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Number 1, start with cooperation. Be nice. Number 2, be retaliatory. If your opponent harms you, strike back immediately and teach them. Number 3, after someone harms you, be forgiving and keep playing with them in an honorable way.
Just remember, I was one man against many. Fighting a losing battle, but I still fought to the end.
That means press on. That means endure. That means God cannot fail, and you're not going to give up. That's not an option for a child of God. This means you are going to be remembered. Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me, oh, when is it going to get easier? When you die.